Just imagine it. You pour millions of pounds, thousands of hours and countless amounts of stress into designing, developing and testing a new car. And then, someone in the marketing department slaps a soulless alphanumeric moniker on it. Okay, so some of those cars have come to represent more than just a collection of letters and numbers. F40, M3, 911. All of them are legends. But nothing sticks in the mind quite like a really good name. These are our favourite ones of all time. If you do enjoy this video, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel and hit that bell to make sure you see all of Goodwood Road and Racing's videos. Here is an example of how almost any relatively mundane word or phrase sounds 1,000 times better in Italian than English. In this case, disco volante translates to flying saucer. Rather than a UFO sighting the internet spends years discussing, this disco volante was a series of experimental low-drag racing cars developed by Touring. Underneath, it had the mechanicals of an Alfa Romeo 1900 and a space frame chassis. Touring's job with the body was to reduce drag as much as possible, and they chose to make 5 lenticular bodies, as in lens-shaped. Take off the wheels, and the Disco Volante would look quite capable of hovering over Area 51. Well before AMG was just another part of Mercedes, even before it was recognised as an official tuner by Stuttgart. That was when it was making some properly mad things, and adding some really crazy names. Today, AMG has at its disposal the engineering might of Mercedes, and spends most of its time doing wondrous things, tuning chassis, turbocharging, and now making hybrid powertrains. 30 years before, it was a simpler formula. Take a Mercedes, add as much engine as possible, and profit. In this case, they put a big V8 into the W124 saloon and coupe, then lowered it a bit, added some really fat rubber, and made sure it could outrun a supercar. It was really taking a sledgehammer to crack a nut, so of course they just called it the Hammer. Bentley hasn't really been regarded as a racing brand in the same way as, say, Ferrari or Porsche. But motorsport was, nevertheless, where Bentley proved itself. But it wasn't in F1, where companies spend a leisurely Sunday afternoon racing a few times a year. Bentley was all about Le Mans, proving itself in twice-round-the-clock competition. Massively over-engineered, over-engined and over-boosted, Ettore Bugatti sniffily dismissed the Bentley 3-litre series of cars as the fastest lorries in the world. But Bentley won at Le Sarthe in 1924, 1927, 28, 29 and 30, making Bugatti eat his words and earning Bentley the right to later name its fastest saloon the Mulsanne, after the famous 3.7-mile straight. The whole ethos of American automotive culture, design and in some ways engineering largely sprung from a romanticism for the open road. The idea of desert highways, huge skies for mile upon hundreds of miles as you hurried across the continent, created a specific wish for large, powerful and comfy land cruisers. That romantic notion also gave rise to one of Buick's most enduring models, which first appeared in 1936. As if its name wasn't straightforward enough, the sales brochure even stated, "It literally named itself the first time a test model levelled out on the open highway." It is the 5th generation, introduced in 1949, that we really love, with its bomb-sight bonnet mascot, ventiports in the front wings, toothy grille, and Buick's first V8, the equally marvellously named Nailhead. If this followed the theory that names are often derived from the purpose of the car, this would be, surely, a stripped-down purist sports car, maybe like a Caterham. But of course, what it actually is is a K car that Daihatsu made from 1994 to 1999. Like all K cars, it had a tiny 658cc turbocharged engine and some rather nifty engineering, and could be had with either front or four-wheel drive. The name has nothing to do with it being one for the purist. Instead, it refers to the fact that Daihatsu deliberately styled the car to have exposed rivets and hinges on its panels in order to give the impression of simplicity and, apparently, ruggedness. Performance SUVs and pickup trucks are no longer an oddity. In fact, in some cases, they're pretty much the norm of a suburban street these days. But GMC was well ahead of the curve in the early 90s with the Syclone. This was a turbocharged four-wheel drive small pickup developed for GMC by Production Automotive Services, the same firm that developed the Pontiac Turbo Trans Am. Back in the final decade of the 20th century, turbocharging was still somewhat of a rarity, and was a little more primitive than it is now. So the Syclone's big 4.3-litre V6 produced a stunning 280 horsepower. That said, it was still able to outrun some contemporary supercars, with a 0 to 62 mile an hour time of just 4.3 seconds, which wouldn't actually be that bad today. The name? Well, that refers to the spinning power of the turbocharger, which is why the Syclone's SUV sister car was called the Typhoon. Using aircraft names for road cars is a well-established practice. The Ford Mustang is named after the P-51 fighter and not the Wild Horse, and Triumph sold the Spitfire two-seater for nearly 20 years. Jensen, however, named its 1950 sports car after an entire class of plane, the Interceptor. Fast, agile, and fearsome, who wouldn't want a car named thus? Made of aluminium and steel on a wooden frame with a straight six, the Interceptor was pretty fast for its day. And then Briggs Cunningham fitted a Chrysler Firepower Hemi V8 to his, making it second only to the mighty Mercedes 300 SL. The Mazda Bongo van has been the workhorse across Southeast Asia, Australia and the US since the mid-1960s. It was named, for reasons that presumably made sense back then, after an African antelope. It is the campervan version that we love. This took a Bongo, added seats that folded down into a double bed, factory-fitted kitchen and, if you wanted, a pop-up roof for more headroom. And to show that it was now for people, not pallets, Friendee was added to the name. Perfect. Incidentally, the large van version was equally as brilliantly called the Bongo Brawny. How times have changed. Back in the 1960s, Plymouth paid Warner Brothers $50,000 for the right to use the Roadrunner name and cartoon likeness on its 1968 muscle car. They apparently even spent about $10,000, or around $80,000 today, to develop a meep meep horn for the car. On slightly more important matters, it also shared the same 426 Hemi V8 with the Belvedere. Also, this was the basis for one of the most famous NASCAR racers of all time. The low-profile nose with pop-up headlights, smoothed off body, and truly gigantic rear wing were all innovations used to create a car specifically to lure Richard Petty away from Ford and back into Mopar. So what do you call an even faster Roadrunner? Superbird, of course. And then you stick a giant decal of the cartoon holding a helmet on that big old wing. Using the name Dictator for a large imposing saloon is a bold move. Studebaker said its choice to use the term was to imply that the car, quote, dictated standards to which other cars would aspire. Sure. First appearing in 1927, the Dictator was, rather surprisingly, at the bottom of that particular range of Studebakers, being topped by the Commander and President models. While it might have sounded okay to American ears, marketing it abroad was deemed to be a bit too tough, and it was named the Studebaker Director outside the US. For some pretty obvious reasons, the name was abruptly dropped in 1937. The pickup is an all-American icon. It signifies the work hard, play hard nation. Japan was not really known for its pickups. However, Subaru tried to break into this very lucrative small truck market, but wanted to do something a bit different to the big V8 heavy body establishment. Its solution was the bi-drive recreational all-terrain transporter. Fitted with a 1.6-litre engine, the Subaru stashed its spare tyre under the bonnet and could be had with a Targa roof. There was even the option to fit a pair of rear-facing jump seats into the load bed. Regardless of Subaru's claim for a clever acronym, what better name for an upstart car thumbing its nose at an old-fashioned way of doing things than the Brat? Those are our 11 favourite car names of all time. But which ones have we missed out? Let us know in the comments below.